Hi everyone, I hope you're well. This is CoinsKid. Just going to note XRP once again. Thank you for support. Okay, being a CoinsKid crew. So yesterday I got my LA on the radar, took a look, and you can clearly see on the monthly overbought, 1 minute overbought, 5 minute, 15 minute, 1 hour. Okay, so we're pushing out for XRP, and we were pumping into the God candle backtest. For anyone that paid attention, I've shown you exactly where that was in yesterday's video. And like I said to you, I think we're just retracing into that in some kind of ABC before a potential drop to the downside. Now it looks as though XRP's caught in a bearish triple top descending triangle pattern. We're getting this compression leading to expansion, and it looks as though we're geared for a drop to the downside because of a couple of things that I'm looking at with yourselves in confluence. One is the crystal ball, one is the LD right now that spiked over 100% yesterday. It means that mamas and papas are taking money off the table. You know, they're not risking at the moment, and usually typically when we see the LD spike like this, it does mean we're in for some kind of drop, which has always been an opportunity. Okay, and equally it looks as though right now a key chart, and we've been paying attention to this key chart for a very long time, has hit a major level of resistance right there. So short term I'm bearish on XRP. I have been for quite a while, but macro I'm still bullish, providing we can hold this 190 support going forward. Okay, if we hold this 190, I think we've got a chance for a Q4 blow off top basically for XRP in the final move of a massive move that began in 2023 right there. So we'll take a look at the charts, and obviously with that, for anyone that's been paying attention, that will ring the data true of the 4-year cycles, where you know you've had your 1 year depreciation for Bitcoin, and then you've had your 3 years appreciation, where into Q4 of that final year you do see a push up, especially for Bitcoin, and that would carry the weight for XRP going forward. So we'll look at all the charts with you today, because one of the characteristics of the cycle top has not necessarily triggered yet, although we did see something in late 2024 that was obviously a warning shot that I relayed to you, but I don't necessarily think the top's in unless we start to see the 190 loss from this point. It changes the game completely. So let's dive in. Okay, but if you want to get the radar, go to coinskid.com and follow the process. Lovely little system I create for yourselves. I am making alerts for this that go to your phone and your email, so stay tuned. Okay, let's dive into the charts right now. So looking at the SP500, really simple. Every time we hit a fib, we're having some kind of correction in crypto. We're seeing a pullback where people jump into a safe haven, you know, and we're seeing that represented in your tether dominance chart. It's no new news, okay, and this is something we're looking at. So as we run into a 2 fib, anticipate some kind of correction, and you can clearly see you run into that 2 fib and what's happening. You're getting that uptick, that pullback, you know, basically your uptick in tether dominance, where people are beginning to jump into tether over crypto. They're taking risk off basically in the crypto, and this green line, which is your tether dominance, is a representation of that. So you know, clearly look at that. That's your top in I think late 2022, and that's your bottom basically. Look at that. So you're coming down the stairs, you're beginning to come down the stairs in the tether dominance, and you're breaking up in the king of rich, your SP500. So every time we hit these levels of resistance, look, hitting that, you're popping, you're hitting that, you're popping. Even here you're hitting this level of resistance just there, you're popping for the tether dominance. Even here you're hitting this resistance, what's happening? You're popping for the tether dominance, you're hitting that resistance, you're popping for the tether dominance. So you know, the resistance in the fibs is absolutely amazing, and it leads to pullbacks in crypto, okay, within this chart, and this is something we're looking at. So like I said to you, as we ramp up into the 2 fib, you know, I do think there'll be a correction in the markets, and lo and behold there is, and people are jumping into tether. So I think what we're going to do is pay attention to the ribbon from this point. If we was to break down below the ribbon like we did there, where we make, you know, series of lower lows, lower highs, then okay, we've got to respect we're in a pullback, we're in a, you know, downtrend. At that point we look from the, you know, the 5 waves of death to the downside, where we jump back into crypto. So at the moment we ramped up into the 2 fib, we're doing really, really well in this chart. You know, my primary at the moment is this, a 1 into a pullback 2 into a 3, just there we've had this 4, macro wave 4, you know, you big zigzag correction, you broke out in the final fifth, and you're coming up the stairs. So I'm looking for more data in this impulse here that tells us it's over. At the moment we don't see a bearish divergence on these pivot points, and again this top of this 3rd wave, look, you're creating that monster bearish divergence, so a triple bearish divergence, and the top of this wave here before that rollover, again you're creating that bearish divergence, and we just don't quite see it just yet on this move for the S&P 500. So I think, you know, we're still bullish here for the S&P 500, but at any point, you know, it starts to lose its ribbon from this point, from this breakout, okay, you're looking at your big macro correction just like what we got there, and that's not where you want to be holding on to crypto. And what we're going to do is just kick back, relax, find the bottom of the correction like we did here, and then we break out, boom, January 2023, look at that. That's where I flipped incredibly bullish on XRP. I said to you, it's all systems go here, guys, and we're looking at 1.618 to the 82 cents, the pullback, and then the you know, continuation. So I'm looking at that. The S&P 500 is a major chart that we need to pay attention to. It's the king of risk going forward, okay? And like I've said to you, the king of risk holds all the clues. This is number 1, Bitcoin's number 2. your minnows, your XRP, Ethereum, things like that are basically number 3. And this carries all the weight. We have to pay attention to this, because if this rolls over, okay, I'm jumping ship, and at that point looking for the 5 waves of death in a potential drop to the downside. But it's not doing it yet. But what it is doing, respectfully, is running to the fib and having a correction. And it's exactly what happens every single time in this chart, okay? And like I said to you, for anyone paying attention, keep an eye on that, because it's a confluence, okay, we will incur some kind of correction in crypto. So, if we can get this correction out of the way, hold support, I think we could have another move here in this particular chart to the 2.272, where, again, we're beginning to push a look if we're expecting this to continue, because like I said to you, in 1, 2, 3, pullback 4, we're in the final 5th wave territory here within this chart within itself, okay? So let's dive into the XRP chart, see what we can see. But at the moment, just keep an eye on the S&P. If it does begin to roll over significantly and it loses a ribbon, okay, XRP is in a world of trouble, okay? And it will carry its weight down to that. Let's jump into the XRP chart right now to see what we can see. So looking at XRP on a 15-minute time frame, I think on the macro we've got this some kind of descending triangle, which is a reversal pattern, but we'll take a look at that zoomed out in a moment. But if you take a look at this, we've got this beautiful 1 into a 2 into a breakdown 3, right now potential 4 that's coming up like this, and then you're looking at a final drop here. So this may be some kind of leading or ending diagonal of a correction, basically. So from here we may actually have a trend line for XRP that we can respect, okay? And once we break that trend line, okay, it could be a nice little move down the future line for XRP. And what we've got here is potentially your connection of a continued correction here for XRP. So this could be a lovely little broadening bottom pattern that's breaking down from this eye. You come down to support, ran to resistance, got support here, ran into the same resistance, so you're creating this neckline, and it looks like some kind of broadening bottom at the moment, okay? So I do like to trade trend lines, as you're fully aware, and if this does start to continue to the downside, you could just target this sort of zone here as a potential scenario, okay? So again, this is technical analysis, there's no absolutes, but what we've got here is basically we've come down like this in a 1, come back in a 2, and we've dropped in this waterfall 3, got this retracement in the 4, and right now we could be gearing up for a final 5th, which is the largest move of this entire move to the downside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down. At that point, if we do start to see that, then obviously I'm a buy, not a cry down here on this neckline would be amazing, because what we've got, if you zoom out on the 4 hour, we're looking at this anyway. We're looking at this beautiful leading diagonal that's been created, where you got the 1 into a pullback 2 into the 3 into, oh no, it's going to 0, 4, and then the blow off, leading diagonal. So that's currently my primary, and obviously the support for that is this neckline. If we do begin to break down below that neckline, you're losing this level support of a leading diagonal, and equally this yellow line here, this is support of a wave 2 correction. So possibly a 1 into a 2 into a 3 into a 4 into a final 5th to the upside. That is currently my primary outlook, and obviously I'm looking for the invalidation, and I keep looking at this every single day with you. So if we take a look at this particular chart right now for XRP, we'll leave that intact, but if we zoom out on the 4 hour, what we do have here, if you take a look, is basically a descending triangle, where from this peak here, after 5 waves, 1, 2, breakout 3, 4, 5, we have seen this overlapping corrective waves where we're making lower highs in the process into the same support. So if we lose this support, you're down here, okay? From this target, you've got a descending triangle that does something like that and then starts to turn around. So that would be my current outlook for XRP going forward, okay? As we push into October, we may see some kind of flush out, some kind of, basically bear trap down here, and we get really oversold with bullish divergence on the 4 hourly time frame, and then that's it. It's all systems go. We can hold this neckline and this level here, really important. If we can hold 190 in this retracement after a 5 wave move to the upside, then it could be all systems go for that impulse, into Q4 right there, which would be absolutely amazing. So it's all about this retracement I'm going through right now. We're coming down, we've got this descending triangle, it's pretty nasty, but if we do begin to drop into this neckline and hold this yellow line, then I think we could be gearing up for a nice Q4 for XRP further down the line, okay? So let's dive into the Bitcoin dominance chart right now to see what we can see. But it's all about its retracement. At the moment, a little bit short-term bearish on XRP because of this descending triangle pattern that we're creating and this potential broadening bottom right at the end of it. This is your descending triangle pattern. From there today, you're getting this support. You're making a series of lower highs. Look at that. So you're coming down the stairs, getting compressed. And like I've always taught you, compression leads to expansion. Right towards the apex, you do see a reaction. So something's going to happen relatively soon. If this is a broadening bottom of a 5 wave move to the downside, finishing off this correction, it could be right on cue on that neckline for the big V shape and the rocket ship to the vertical upside for XRP. Let's dive into the Bitcoin dominance right now to see what we can see. Okay, looking at Bitcoin dominance, very important chart. Now, one thing we've not seen so far is a waterfall in the Bitcoin dominance, which is telltale characteristics of the top. We are seeing this little drop in the Bitcoin dominance, and as anticipated, I did say to you, I think we'll see a little retracement into the ribbon here. So over the next few weeks, if we can see this retracement into the ribbon and then we begin to turn around like we did there, get the red sailed arc, transition from green into yellow into red, wow, we've got a lovely vertical across the board for ourselves in a lot of altcoins. Not necessarily, and I know people don't want to hear it, is XRP, because I think what XRP's done from this point here, when it dropped here in the Bitcoin dominance, I was forecasting a major vertical for XRP, a big third wave, and I think we've seen that for XRP, and I think that potentially we've had that big 6-7x on XRP. I think from here right now, if we see this drop, you're going to see your mid caps do 6-7x. I think XRP's potentially got a double in front of it, and the same with Ethereum. I think we've seen the Ethereum season from this drop just there. We saw Ethereum pop to the upside, and again Ethereum may double from this point. Okay, but what we're looking at on this big waterfall, if you go back to the charts just there and to the charts just there, you was looking at your mid caps from nowhere just did 10, 20, 30, 40x, which was amazing. So that was a characteristic at the top that we're looking at. So in theory, what we're looking at is a very similar situation to what we got there. Right towards the end of the cycle, we saw the retracement to the ribbon, then the drop, the retracement to the ribbon, and then the drop. So we could be gearing up for that Q4 finish with that potential trend line being retested for XRP, where it comes down and then breaks to the upside, where it potentially doubles or triples or whatever. So again, I think there's more appreciation in these altcoins. If right now we're at that point where we were in previous cycles, before the big push to the upside, then we should be looking at a waterfall in the Bitcoin dominance, which is the telltale characteristics of the cycle top, which we've just simply not seen so far, and everyone's jumping up and down saying the top's in. So I wish I must look, but going forward, these pullbacks in dominance are opportunities in altcoins. We had a lovely opportunity in XRP. We was looking at the reasons for that, and big tick that happened. Again, for anyone paying attention, this drop in the dominance, we're looking at reasons for Ethereum to pop. Like I said to you at the time frame, I think it was way back there in April, I said to you, I think Ethereum has got more appreciation from this point than XRP, and it did. It was beautiful. And right now, same situation. If we can get this resistance begin to flip from green into yellow into red with a red sell dart, I think we've got some amazing opportunities in some of these mid caps going forward, and I'll try and find them as best I can for you. Okay, so keep an eye on the Bitcoin dominance. Really important over the next few weeks. If we can rally into the resistance of the ribbon and we begin to transition from yellow into red, it's the opposite of this uptrend for Bitcoin. It'll be a downtrend for the dominance, which obviously is good for our altcoin portfolio. You can get this ribbon into your charts. Just go to CoinsKid.com, follow the process. Hope you understand that update. Stay off, stay strong, stay tuned. Take care, everyone. Thanks for a new update on XRP. Bye bye.